Our Veterans Tribute this hour and every hour, this day and every day, brought to you proudly, dutifully, by our man, John Basiliga. As we do on every Monday, we feature his first company and his biggest company, Eastern Roofing Systems, the premier roofing contractor in the eastern United States for institutional, commercial, and industrial purposes. And they take all that expertise, all that buying power, and they bring it to you in Northeast Pennsylvania for your house or your project. You just heard about them and the work they're doing down at Lace Village. Eastern Roofing Systems and our man, John Basiliga. Giselle Weatherman. Giselle passed away at age 70, March 31st. She was from Ringtown. Born in Hazleton. She spent the past 18 years in Ringtown after moving from West Hazleton. A graduate of Hazleton High School in 1973, and then from East Stroudsburg University. She worked as a substitute teacher for Hazleton area for over 20 years. Also a lifeguard at YMCA Hazleton. Taught water aerobics there. She owned her own exercise studio, Lifespan, in Hazleton. Giselle served this country in our great United States Army. In her younger years, Giselle enjoyed spending time with horses, gardening, painting. Preceded in death by her parents and 3 brothers, she's survived by her devoted husband, Robert, to whom she was married in 1996, also surviving 2 beloved daughters and other family members. Giselle Weatherman, our great veteran, brought to you this hour by our friend John Basiliga and his great Eastern Roofing Systems. Well, the AccuWeather forecast brought to you by the great gang up at Montage Mountain Resort. And they're swinging into spring. The spring's not cooperating, at least today, where there'll be rain or snow shower even early this morning. Otherwise, chilly with periods of clouds and sunshine. A jacket may come in handy, AccuWeather helpfully tells us. But we already knew that, didn't we? High of 48. Tonight, clear and cold. It'll get as low as 26. Tomorrow, Tuesday, mostly sunny, 56, more seasonable weather with a low of 41. Wednesday, getting a little better, a morning shower in the area. Otherwise, clouds giving way to some sun, 63 degrees, low 43. Thursday, partly sunny and beautiful. Back up to 72 degrees, says AccuWeather. And our friends at Montage, low 46. Friday, times of clouds and sun, 71 degrees, low 45. Right now, it's 38 at Montage Mountain, and it feels colder. That's your weather, brought to you by our great friends at Montage Mountain Resort. Swing into spring, there's always something happening there. Well, Murph says April 20th, 1966, the Beatles recorded their Taxman at EMI Studios in London, proving that they're British. Because Tax Day for us is April 15th here in the country. Amazing stuff. Hey, Tyler Cornell's in the studio to tell us about the traffic I was just in and anything else, but tell us about that.
Okay, yeah. So traffic is definitely bumper to bumper heading southbound on 81. It starts at exit 178 Avoca, but there is a lane restriction causing a backlog that is already at exit 182 Montage Mountain Road. What lane did they have you getting into when you were on your way
The right lane was closed.
The right lane was closed. Okay, so everybody get into the left lane if you can.
It's too late.
If you can. I don't know how,
And I was on the air, and this poor truck driver hauling slate.
Yeah.
He gave me the what? Like,
what am I
let me in.
Yeah, I have to.
And I didn't see him.
Yeah, they set up those cones so early nowadays. It's just like you have to get in. But yeah, it's weird that it's starting only at 178 Avoca, but now it's like all the way backed up to 182.
And there's traffic cones, Tyler, that guide the exits in Pittston, the two Pittston exits.
Okay.
Good, but not really, because they come up on you at the last moment.
Yeah. You have to be on edge for that, because if you're not, you might just end up missing it, and then that screws up everything. I've done that before, so it sucks. But
all right. So how long is this going to go? What's the deal?
Well, so the anticipated end time for this is 3:30 today, but I'm expecting this is going to go on the rest of the week, because I read on the site that it's construction between 178 Avoca and 159 New Angola. It's like the whole way down. So I'm if it's already like that way from, Avoca to Music, I'm thinking it's going to be worse throughout the week. They must be moving down each day, because we did not get an email or anything about it. But I'm just going to assume if it's that big of a construction, like telling me that it's going to be that big. So I would just plan accordingly for the rest of the week, just in case. It says that it started around 8 a.m. today. So I would assume for the rest of the week, just kind of keep an eye on it. And I'll, if there's anything, obviously I'll update in the morning reports and all that. But
I have road construction on my street, which we're getting no information on. And now no road construction on 81 South, which we're getting no information on. Yeah. Fascinating.
No, it's real. It's really annoying. But this is the time of the year, though, where it just starts popping up everywhere. Sometimes it's just hard for me to even keep up where it's happening, because it's sprouting up between 80 and 81, and then 309 and all that. So it's pretty bad. So
all right,
hang in there, guys.
No problem. No problem. My Bacardi Jewelers watch tells me it's 10 on the nose. Well, you know what that means. That means we got the news with Brian Hughes. Let's do that, and then we'll be back. It's a Monday, so it's time for Monday Musings. We'll be back. Trying to get the darn live stream here on YouTube. Nothing angers me more than technology that is difficult or is not functioning. One or the other. We'll talk about it. But that live stream is brought to you by our friends at Roach Supply, the premier bath and kitchen supplier in Northeast Pennsylvania. 75 years in business. That means they're good at what they do. That means they're the best at what they do. RoachSupply.com today. Check them out. ROCHE supply.com. Great good morning, everyone. 10:07 a.m. on my Cordaro Jewelers Watch this beautiful Monday, April 20th, year of our Lord 20 and 26 here in the great Northeast. This is the Bob Cordaro Show. I am he, and it's a big day to fight for America, defend our values, and honor with the help of our man, John Basiliga, and his great Eastern Roofing Company, Eastern Roofing Systems, the brave who have made us and kept us free. People like veterans we've lost this year, but celebrate today thanks to John, including Giselle Weatherman, Ringtown, Salvatore Verastro, Dunmore, Jack Southerton, Honesdale. So with history, our amazing founding fathers, who we will not allow to be canceled, and the incomparable Constitution of the United States of America as our guides, let us continue today's battle, gaveling back to order, even though we didn't gavel to order in the first place from Route 81. Our meeting of the Club for Common Sense, promising that our deep and unalterable commitment to common sense will provide a sanctuary of sanity to all of you who hearken here. Navy guy texting in, sarcastically, snarkily. There's a thing called Google Maps, helps avoid those traffic jams if you check it first. We got the best traffic in the business here, and this popped up. Navy guy. Bob, somebody texted, Bob, I thought you were broadcasting the start of the show from a pothole in front of your house. I know. Oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. Crazy stuff. Anyway, it's Monday. Well, you know what that means. It means time for Monday Musings with our man, John Perillo. John, welcome back to the program, The Bob Cordaro Show. How are you, friend?
I'm good. How are you, Bob?
Well, I mean, I'm far from frazzled. I mean,
well, that's good.
You've been in combat. Like, you understand how things can turn differently on you. And and then it actually matters. So here it didn't matter. I said, okay, I'm going to call in the Bulldog. I'm going to call in the start of the show. And that's what we did. It's not quite Marines Adapt and Overcome. It was simply, all right, I'll start the show on the phone. Well, and that's what we did.
Just go easy on Navy guy. I mean, I'm with him there.
No, Navy guy was being very snarky.
Okay, all right. Well, and on to adaptability and all that. And again, this is, by the way, winds up being a great lead-in for this week's segment. And I promise you, Bob and I actually didn't discuss this in advance of this, but this week's musing, a little background first, right? And I want to talk about what happened last week and the little kerfluffle between the Pope and the president. And, you need a little background for this understanding because I think it's kind of important. And before the outbreak of World War II, there was a suggestion that perhaps the Pope should attend some proposed peace negotiations to help avoid another world war. And the horrors of World War I were still in everyone's mind. And that war had been called the war to end all wars because it was so horrific. Things like trench warfare, poison gas, massed artillery charges against machine guns, horse-mounted soldiers charging artillery. I mean, brutal screaming death on an unimaginable scale. And nobody thought that humans would be so stupid that they would actually fight another war. So Joseph Stalin, as a Soviet dictator, gets consulted about perhaps involving the Pope in negotiations to prevent World War II. And here there's a little bit of confusion historically, but either in a meeting with the French Prime Minister Pierre Laval or in response to something that Winston Churchill said, Stalin responds, quote, "And how many divisions does the Pope have?" Right? So Stalin there is scoffing at any influence that the Pope might have because there's no army backing up the Pope. The Pope can say what he wants, but he can't back it up. But of course, the Pope then and now has a great deal of influence, and even if none of it is military. And a bit over half of all the Christians in the world are Catholics, and even among non-Catholics, people consistently see the Pope as an important moral figure. And I thought, especially with this hullabaloo kind of calming down, a bit of the exchange between the Pope and our president, perhaps we could take a look at it with calmer heads and with the benefit of some perspective and hindsight.
Well, I'm not calm yet, just so you know.
Well, okay. I'll help you out, okay? That's my goal here, right? So let's start with a little bit about the just war doctrine, right? That's another Catholic thing that's been around for centuries that people reference without really knowing what it says or where it came from. And essentially the Roman Emperor St. Augustine, who was a Christian, and later St. Thomas Aquinas write this treatise that we've been using ever since then to decide when it's permissible to use military force. And to begin with, the doctrine clearly states that not all war is unjust. Countries can certainly defend themselves. We can defend innocence. And while individually we're asked to be pacifistic, to turn the other cheek from the Bible, in the defense of others, there are times when justice allows the use of force. The just war theory also does not require an imminent threat. It does not require for you to be attacked before you respond, but it states that going to war to increase your territory or for glory or for any reason other than the defense of innocence is morally wrong. So the Pope, in keeping with the just war doctrine, posted, and I'm going to quote him here, "Blessed are the peacemakers, but woe to those who manipulate religion and the very name of God for their own military, economic, and political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth," end quote. And of course, this got lots of people upset, but also, of course, most of the press, including CNN and USA Today and others, got it pretty wrong. Because in that post, in writing, the Pope referenced with the hashtag @Cameroon, which is where he was traveling and speaking out against the ongoing conflict there. And there was lots of killing of Catholics and other Christians. And he goes on to say that, quote, "The world is being ravaged by a handful of tyrants." Now, again, because this is very important, the Pope was in Africa when he posted this. He was specifically addressing the death of his followers. And again, in writing, he says this is about Cameroon. And he said this on April 16th. And in the president's defense, I looked at CNN, NPR, New York Times, and none of their initial reports included that the Pope had included the hashtag @Cameroon. Right? And then on Easter Sunday, the president posted that if the Iranians didn't give in, quote, "the entire civilization," end quote, "of Iran would die." And now in response to that, the Pope did say that was truly unacceptable, end quote. And he goes on to say that, quote, "There are certainly issues of international law, but even more than that, it's a moral question for the good of the world's people," end quote. And with the benefit of a couple of days for everyone to calm down, it seems to me at least that there's precisely nothing in either of those papal statements that's even remotely controversial. If you want to say that Trump threatening to destroy an entire civilization is just Trump being Trump, which I understand, which is different from saying that I support it, but even if we grant that, it doesn't seem like much of a stress for a priest or any priest to say that the threatening of the destruction of a civilization is probably not a good thing, and to say that certainly at least.
All right, and so I'm going to push back on you. Why didn't he just say that? That was an asinine statement by Trump. Why didn't he just say that? He didn't.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I never asked me to explain why Trump says what Trump says.
No. I'm asking why the Pope didn't say this. His statement is unacceptable. Why not say that?
He says he did. The Pope's quote was, "This is truly unexacceptable," end quote. And then he goes on to say there are certainly issues
in reference to what
law.
Question, John?
In reference to the president posting that if Iran didn't give in, he would destroy the entire civilization. That was Trump's quote.
And unacceptable.
Right, and he just says it's unacceptable, right? And then he goes on to say, the Pope goes on to say, that people should contact their leaders and ask them to pursue peace. And then he urges people to pray for peace during this time of, quote, "delicate diplomacy." Again, nothing that got my shorts up in a knot in that particular case, right? So then on April 11th, the Pope talks about the, quote, "delusion of omnipotence that surrounds us and is becoming increasingly unpredictable and aggressive." And then same statement, he goes on to say, "enough of the display of power, enough of war. True strength is shown in serving life." A couple of thoughts on those comments. In none of those comments did he mention the U.S. So he certainly could have been directing those comments at the president or whomever we think is running Iran now, or the leaders of Hezbollah who had just started attacking Israel again, or the Israeli prime minister, or the forces still killing Christians in Cameroon, or the rest of Africa, or President Putin.
I wonder who David Axelrod
other...
told him to reference.
Well, but that's not what the Pope said, regardless of what David Axelrod said, right? The Pope's quote is pretty clear, right? And what he said was perfectly reasonable for a Catholic priest to say, and entirely in keeping with both Catholic tradition, teaching, and doctrine, right? War, while sometimes just, is always bad. Power for power's sake is evil, and we need to serve life. Well, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition, and we see in this celebration of Easter, the celebration of the risen Messiah, that is real omnipotence. Okay, so that's the week before the Pope makes this statement. Again, for Christians, nothing here is even remotely constitutional. The Pope's comment that God doesn't listen to the prayers of those wielding swords was the one thing that I thought was worthy of criticism. Because I can guarantee you that lots of war fighters pray, and if you've ever been shot at, I assure you that you pray. And while I certainly can't prove it, I genuinely believe that God listens to those prayers, right? But anyway, after that, we get into then President Trump posts about the Pope being weak, and the Pope, again, responds appropriately in my mind that he doesn't fear the Trump administration. Well, yeah, he has only one leader to fear, one boss, and that's the same one that St. Thomas was writing about. Right. But I do want to talk a little bit more about just wars from both St. Augustine and St. Aquinas. And some of this matches my personal observations, if that helps you at all as listeners. And even though there are certainly reasons where a war might be just, Augustine still warns us about the moral dangers of war, no matter how just it is. People in the military get injured, physically certainly, but more importantly, from an Augustine point of view, morally as well. There's this danger of becoming righteously vengeful. I think bloodlust would probably be a good modern word for it, right? Of losing our humanity in the face of horrible evil that you see, and all that evil is made worse by physical exhaustion. You're hungry, you're dirty, you're tired, and you tend to respond without thinking, right? There are always some who use war to seek glory or to wield, a false sense of power, or who become intemperate in language and thought and actions. And all those things are things I personally saw, and we know that happens in wartime. And those who have been unfortunate enough to get close to war, and our political leaders as well. We aren't called to be pacifists by any stretch of the imagination, but we are asked not to see war as anything but the horrible necessity that it sometimes is, and to recognize its dangers for us, even if we are, quote, just, and even if we, quote, win. And in my opinion, a fair amount of this kerfluffle was the press trying to use whatever the Pope said in order to attack Trump, and to create conflict where there really wasn't one.
All right. So, all right. But the Pope doesn't understand that would happen? Please.
Well, I
mean,
no,
he's making what he could deny are unambiguous, pointed statements, and knows what the media will do in America. Knows it. He's American.
I don't think that's the Pope's job is to wonder what the press is going to do, right? The Pope's job is, as a spiritual leader, is to tell you and to inform all of us about the moral dangers of war, right? And again, just war theory and all that aside,
which he screwed up on, he misinterpreted completely.
No, I disagree. I don't think he misinterpreted. I think what he said was that. That if you look at the just war theory, two actions, the same action can be either right or wrong depending on its intent, right? And an example of that is if you're walking down the street and some guy pushes an old lady in front of the bus, that's wrong. And if walking down the street and some guy pushes an old lady out of the way of the bus, that's right. And we don't condemn them both for pushing old ladies around. Right, so the intent of what you're doing matters, right? And I'm not picking a side here because I don't think there is a side to pick. I think that whether a war is just or not is something that we certainly should think about, right? What I'm saying is what I'm asking people to do is to remember the inflamed passions that Madison wrote about in the Federalist Papers, and I think it would greatly help our country if we thought about Madison, especially when half the time the information that's getting through to you is being manipulated by the press and social media precisely to inflame your passions. And I'm asking you to go back to something that John Adams, writing to his wife Abigail, said, quote, "Power always thinks it has a great soul and vast views beyond the comprehension of the weak, and that it is doing God's service when it is violating all laws, end quote. That's 200 years ago. And as usual to listeners of this piece, nothing ever changes, right? I'm just asking you to be careful as you listen to the story, because like I said, the press didn't give you all of what the Pope had said. It gave you what it wanted you to hear in order for you to make a conclusion, right? Whether the war is just or not, I'm not commenting on. We can have that discussion at another time. But just war theory requires that you're protecting innocence and that you're doing it for that purpose.
Like the 42,000 that were slaughtered by the Iranian regime.
Right. And if
no mention of them. No mention of them by the Pope, John. None.
Well, how many and when the president gets on national TV and says that, if he says that, he is justifying a war under the Augustinian view of what just war theory is. But when he gets up and says, I'm going to destroy a civilization,
wrong,
or I am,
100%.
That's wrong, right? So, again, I'm not picking a side here. That's not my job. My job is to, not to tell you what to think, but to maybe help you think about how to think about the problem.
And as far as I'll go with you on this, John, is two wrongs don't make a right. Trump was wrong with that statement. Not wrong with the war, wrong with that statement, foolish. And the Pope was wrong with all of his. And I didn't hear any clear denunciation of the slaughter of Christians in Africa from the Pope while he was in Africa.
Well, that was his tweet or his discussion ended with the hashtag @Cameroon. He was physically in Africa, talking about the slaughter of Christians when he made that statement that war was wrong. So yeah, I would actually.
Well, those statements about the slaughter in Africa of Christians didn't make it through.
Well,
I didn't see them.
Well, they did. They made it through, but without the hashtag. Again, I think the press was doing a hit job, if you will, by making you think that statement was about Trump. He was clearly talking about Africa. In that, he put it in writing. @Cameroon was his hashtag.
He didn't mention African Christians getting slaughtered. It was not a clear statement at all. The only clear meaning you could take from it, John, was that he was attacking the United States policy.
Except for that, at the end of the policy, he puts the hashtag @Cameroon.
Means nothing. Meaningless. That's where he was.
Okay.
I'm disgusted with. I'm completely disgusted with him. Completely disgusted with him. I was embarrassed by Trump's statement at the same time, but that doesn't change my disgust with this Pope.
Oh, see, I'm still here.
Yeah, and that doesn't change my disgust with this Pope. I don't know. All right. Well, I appreciate the looking at it from a different perspective. It has not changed my outlook on this guy and his failures in office.
And to your listeners, I appreciate that Bob allows a different point of view and a long discussion that in a disagreement here. I think that's important as listeners for you to pay attention to that. Right? Here's your host saying, I think one thing, but here's the other side. Right? I think that's very important. So thank you, Bob. I appreciate that.
And I appreciate you bringing this to us, John. Always thoughtful, always deep, always ready. I thank you, and we'll follow it. We'll follow this Pope and this papacy. It has been an extreme disappointment so far for me.
Right. Well, you guys have a great week. I hope your weather gets a little bit better out there.
It is. It's getting better. It's going to be good better.
There you go. There you go. Man. Look forward to talking to you again. Have a great week, guys.
Thank you, John. John Perillo, Monday Musings. We'll take a break and be back. Our Veterans Tribute this hour and every hour, this day and every day. Brought to you by our friend John Basiliga and his great Basiliga, I apologize, his great Eastern Roofing Systems. His first company, his biggest company. And every Monday we mention them because they're the font of everything else. One of the biggest and the premier roofing contractor in the Eastern United States. And because they're headquartered in Jessup, they'll come and do your home. They'll come and do your building and business. Eastern Roofing Systems. Salvatore Verastro. I knew this man my whole life. We lost him at age 91, March 28th. He was from Dunmore. He'd been preceded in death by his wife, the former Mary Rose DeMarco. Born in Dunmore in 1954, graduate of Dunmore High School. A member of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish in Dunmore, he was a proud Air Force veteran and the owner of Sal's Electrical. Devoted member of the church, he was a collector of cars, trains, and guns, a loving husband, father, grandfather. His grandchildren meant the world to him. Surviving are his sons, David and wife Michelle Peckville, and Jason and wife Jackie of Millenville. 8 grandchildren. 5 great-grandchildren. And many other family members survive him. Tragically, he was preceded in death by my old pal, his son, Salvatore Verastro, sisters and brothers. Salvatore Verastro, our veteran this hour, and with us his son, Dave Verastro, to talk a little bit about his dad. Dave, welcome to the Bob Cordaro Show. Love having you talk about this man. He was just so kind and pleasant every time I saw him, and that was thousands of times over the years.
Yes, Bob. Thank you very much for having me on, and thank you very much for doing this. You and John, this is it's an honor to be talking about my dad. Thank you.
He was a hard worker and just a good, sweet person. Again, I never saw him without ready to smile, ready to, chuckle. Just a real good guy.
Excellent man, very caring, very outgoing, willing to help anybody, anytime. Just a great man in general. They don't make that generation is one of a kind, Bob. I'm sure you know that.
Amazing. They truly were. Did he ever talk about his service with you guys? He certainly wasn't loud about it.
No, he talked about it a lot. He was very proud of his service.
Mm-hmm.
I got a couple great stories if you would.
Please.
If you had the time.
Please.
Well, I could tell you how he signed up. It's actually a great story. His older brother Vince, which I'm sure you probably remember, he was on leave from the Air Force here, home visiting. My dad was only like a year or 2 out of high school. Really didn't know what he wanted to do. So when his brother was on leave, he said, "You know what? He just bought a new car." He said, "Vince, I'll drive you back." He was stationed in California, so they drove cross country together.
That was no small task back then either.
No, you're talking 56 when he did this.
Yeah.
So the both of them drove cross country, got out to the Air Force Base. My dad decided to stay there with him. He was there about a month and a half, and basically all he was doing was working in a diner part-time, and he was meeting my uncle for lunch and dinner at the base all the time. And my uncle said, "Well, what are you going to do with your life?" He says, "I don't know." He says, "Well, come on." He went down, and that's where he signed up, was in California. Signed up for the Air Force. That's where he joined up.
Did he tell you anything about jobs that he did in the Air Force?
Yes. Yes, that's where he learned electrical. He ended up working on the B-36s and B-52s. He was the electrician. That's where he learned how to become an electrician.
Yeah.
That's what he owes his career to, how he started his business and what he retired from. But
Amazing.
he was a mechanic on B-36s at the time Sputnik was launched. If you remember that, with the Russians.
Yeah. I don't remember it firsthand. I'm not that old.
Yeah, he He loved telling this story. Well, I mean, the story he told me was amazing. They were on base on duty. They were working on one of the bombers, and the alarms went off. They all had to go in, get armed. They got their weapons, got their shots for whatever for a nuclear war. Because at the time, the government thought they launched a nuclear weapon. They weren't sure what was going on that Russia launched when they were launching the Sputnik satellite.
Wow.
They went airborne. He was on the plane because he was the electrician, and they were on their way to Russia with the nuclear weapon to retaliate if necessary.
Oh my gosh!
And he was in that. He was a member. He was in what they call SAC. It's the Strategic Air Command. That was his. Yes. And they were in flight. They were in flight about 45 minutes before they got the call to turn around and come back on their way to Russia.
What was his reaction? Did he tell us? I mean, he thinks he's going to drop the bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. He said they were all in shock. They didn't know. They were all scared, nervous, but they had a mission to do, and they were prepared to do it. And the whole plane, all the whole crew. And then he got called. Once they got the call to come back, they were all relieved and everything. And then he spent his time. That's when they started coming out with the B-52s. So that's where he transferred into the B-52s because they were transferred from the B-36 to the B-52s. And he was one of the first mechanics on the B-52s.
Wow. Which are still flying today. So he must have done something right.
Correct. Correct. They did something right. And he used to brag all the time about how big they were. He said it was like wingtip to wingtip. It was a full football field. He said it was insane how big they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The things he saw. And I look at his picture in the obituary and I say, man, I wish I got to talk to him about all this. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah. It was hard. A lot of times I'd have to drag stuff out of him. So we'd be sitting around on a job site. I'd be, Dad, tell me a military story. Tell me something. I don't know. And but he would tell you about it. He loved talking about it when you would talk to him. Loved planes. Loved talking about planes. Still in his garage today. We were just there yesterday doing some cleaning. Still has he used to make the model airplanes, and he has them hanging in the garage.
Wow.
He used to sit. That was one of his part-time things. One of his little hobbies. He'd sit down and glue up all the planes from the Air Force and, the little model sets, and then he would hang them from the ceilings in the garage. And we used to do them as kids with him, too, at times.
And Dave,
me and my brother Sal.
He somehow made it through the death of his son, your brother, Sal, which shocked
very hard
everybody. Man.
Yes, it was very hard on my mom and my dad. They took it very hard. Hard on me and my brother. And my brother Jason. But I was actually with Sal when it happened, and it was not good. I'm sure, I've told you the story. So, and I'm sure you talked to my cousin Tom. So,
well, Dave, I appreciate you talking about your dad, Sal Verastro, someone who deserves tribute as a veteran and as a human being. And I thank you for coming on and participating with it very, very much.
Oh. Bob, thank you for having us. I appreciate it so much. Thank you for everything, you and John, and everything you do with the veterans. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, very much. Sal Verastro, our veteran, this hour, brought to you by John Basiliga and Eastern Roofing Systems. It's hard to do the weather after that. It is so unimportant. But what is important that it's brought to you by our friends at Montage Mountain Resort. Today, the AccuWeather forecast, rain or snow shower early this morning, otherwise chilly with periods of clouds and sunshine, high 48. Tonight, clear and cold, down to 26. Tomorrow, Tuesday, mostly sunny, high 56, low 41. Wednesday, a morning shower in the area, otherwise clouds giving way to some sun, high 63, low 43. Thursday, getting even nicer, partly sunny and beautiful, 72 degrees, says AccuWeather, down to 46 at night. Friday, times of clouds and sun, high 71, low 45. It's 38 degrees at Montage Mountain right now, and they bring you the weather. Well, this roller coaster on weather and everything else emotionally today as well. And that means it's the perfect time for our friend Tina Morocco, global sales advisor at Premier Sotheby's International Realty in Naples, Florida. You can find her at Sotheby's in Naples or go right to the source, Tina Morocco, MURACCO.com. And here she is bringing that sunshine. You know, as soon as you call in, the weather report got better.
I don't know about that.
Oh.
I heard snow showers.
Well, it's going to get better towards the end of the week, but it's still the tail end of your departure that we're suffering from as we speak. Yeah.
For sure.
All right, so what's on your mind today, Tina?
So today I'm actually in South Central Fort Myers showing some properties to a gentleman who's moving here from the Jersey Shore. He's just getting ready to retire and moving here full time. So what he's looking for is he's picking South Central Fort Myers because, I mean, he likes to travel. It's close to the airport. You're only 10 or 15 minutes from the airport, but it's also kind of the hub of everything around here. You're close to the stadium, the Hertz Arena. You're close to the baseball stadiums. You're close to public golf courses. He's looking for something less than 350, like 350,000. So he wants something in newer construction, 2 to 3 bedrooms. So we're looking at some coach homes here in nice communities where the coach homes are the ones where there's a unit on the bottom and a unit on the top, and they have garages like attached in there. And so we're looking at gated communities. The one we're looking at today is Portofino. And that one is a gated community with a fitness center. It has a resort-style pool, newer homes, and everything's included. So it's easy for him. So, your cable, your internet is included, your water's included. So you're really only worried about your electricity and your contents insurance.
Yeah.
So easy for him. He likes the area, too, because, he's really social, doesn't know a lot of people down here. So this area is so nice because, it's busy. Wherever he goes or if he decides to get a part-time job, there's so many things around here that he can do. So it's about half an hour from the Fort Myers beach. And, there's just so much shopping and restaurants. Whole Foods is like 2 minutes away. There's big shopping centers, malls. But it's just kind of in the middle of everything. You're right off of I-75.
And
so
these coach homes are that inexpensive? Mm-hmm. You could get a coach home for under $350 or under? Wow.
Yep. So we're looking at the ones that we're looking at today are between $300,000 and $350,000. They're 2 bedrooms, 2 and 3 bedrooms, 1-car garage to a 2-car garage, and about 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. So nice living there, and it's easy, and like I said, right in the middle of everything here. So it's kind of like city living, but also, like a little resort-style community. This community is situated like in between 2 public golf courses, so if he wants to golf, he can do that. It's also close to Pop Stroke. I don't know if you've heard of Tiger Woods' Pop Stroke.
No, I've heard of his crashes. That's about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know if you guys have Top Golf in Scranton. Top Golf was like it's almost like a driving range slash bar restaurant. We have a Top Golf here. So you go up, and it's just like you get buckets of balls, and they have a bar and a restaurant and wait staff that come over, and you just kind of hit your balls, and you just kind of hang out. Well, Pop Stroke is like a hybrid between that and like mini golf. And so it's like a restaurant and ice cream shop, but it's also 2 18-hole mini golf courses. And they're like a lot of hills, a lot of like little things, like little like lakes and things around it. It's really a cool concept. But we have that. It's about 5 minutes away from this community. Huh. So some fun things to do here.
Fascinating. Well, he's going to get all the info from Tina Morocco, and Portofino sounds, it sounds really good. Oh, that's great stuff. Thank you.
And that's just one of, there's a lot of communities just like Portofino around here situated in this area, South Central Fort Myers. Great location.
Well, as I always say, you go to tinamorocco.com, MURACCO, and you find out that there are many more possibilities in Southwest Florida than you would think. And thank you again, Tina Morocco.
Absolutely, Bob. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Tina Morocco,
Okay, take care.
your trusted source and guide to Florida real estate, specializing in Southwest Florida. And man, that sounds very reasonable. It's less than townhouses here. We'll take a break and be back. It's the Bob Cordaro Show. Fall right now. This date, 1960, and I could do the whole song. The Rolling Stones recorded the hit Jumpin' Jack Flash, Murph tells us, at Olympic Studios, London, England. The name came from Keith Richards' gardener, Jack Dwyer. The song itself is a metaphor for overcoming substance abuse. Great. Oh, one of the all-time great songs. Hey, let's go to the blower. We got Bill from Pittston. Bill, thank you for your patience, my friend.
Well, it's always worth listening to. It's a great show. And you made a great transition from the car. I wouldn't even have guessed you were in the car. Anyway, you're absolutely right. This is a just war because with all the information we know about Iran, they lied to us even how far their missiles could reach. Had given more time, this would have been a disaster, World War III.
Yep. And that, by the way, and that was their. People want to ignore this. I don't know why. That was their stated intent to bring about an apocalypse in the Shia tradition, the 12th Imam. It's insane. Nobody wants to. These people don't want to acknowledge it. I don't get it.
Because they hate Trump. And, you know, as for the Pope, he's a terrible theologian. Trump was being Trump when he said some of those ridiculous things. It was wrong, but the Pope knew who his target was. You don't get to that place in politics. If you study even the moves, for selecting a Pope, John Paul couldn't stand Francis. They were competitors earlier on in. He hated liberation theology. He hated the communists with a passion, and he brought peace. And the thing is, this guy just doesn't have it. I call him Leo the Lesser or Leo the Weak compared to Leo the Great.
I like Leo the Lesser. That's a good name for him.
Well, in any event, you want to talk about warlike popes and how they create. One only has to think of the Crusades, but let me give you a particular one. Julius II. Maybe you've seen the movie The Agony and the Ecstasy.
Certainly heard of it. Sure.
It's a painting of the Sistine Chapel, and Rick Harrison plays Julius II, and he comes off this horse dressed in battle armor, and literally, and he was known as the warrior pope, the battle pope, the fearsome pope. He had a terrible, violent temper. He was rude to his subordinates, but he was a strong pope. He chose the name Julius not because of his predecessor, the first, but because he admired the ruling status of Julius Caesar. So, as a result, this guy, he consolidated in the Papal State Wars, he consolidated the papal power. He organized the Swiss Guard, was the army. He commanded personally a successful campaign in Romagna against the local lords in Italy. It was a consolidation. He personally led them on 11th of April, 1512. 20,000 people were killed in a bloodbath that he led. And he also dealt with the Medicis and the other great crazy people of those times. It was almost like a mafia movie, the way these guys maneuver. So, he even got in a battle at Ravenna where he forced the French troops of Louis XII to retreat behind the Alps. And then he sent more soldiers into the battle from the Holy Roman Empire. But anyway, his object was to get more power, and he was the main force in the Italian War.
Amazing.
So these guys are just incredible. And I'm only touching the surface on this guy, but he really was a very strong. He really made the papacy something very powerful. But watch The Agony and the Ecstasy with Charles.
There's a book, isn't there? Also.
Oh, yeah, it came from a book, but it's about the rivalry and their relationship in painting the Sistine Chapel, and Harrison covers Julius brilliantly with his pompousness. But the point is, the popes have done this. And then before he died, Julius was planning to take on the Ottoman Empire against the Muslims. He was planning a crusade against them, but he unfortunately died before he got to do that. But just think of the cruelty and how the popes initiated the crusades. So that's a just war.
Maybe Leo the Lesser's trying to make up for the previous militancy of the papacy. I don't. It's crazy.
I don't think he knows church history.
Yeah.
He's a sad.
I don't think he cares to know it.
No, he doesn't. He's a politician.
It's certainly within his reach. And this David Axelrod consultation really drives me over the edge. It really does. Going with a left-wing Democrat hack political advisor, meeting with him, a non-Catholic, by the way, is over the top and beyond the pale. Bill, thank you, my man. My Bacardo Jewelers watch says 11:02, which means we've got to go to the news. We'll take a break. We'll be back. It's the Bob Cordaro Show. Great good morning, everyone. It is a beautiful Monday, April 20th, 11:08 a.m. on my Cordaro Jewelers watch. This is the Bob Cordaro Show. I am he, and it's a big day to fight for America, defend our values, and with the help of our man John Basiliga, to honor our great veterans whom we've lost this year, but celebrate today, thanks to John. People like Jack Southerton, Honesdale, Sal Verastro, Dunmore, Giselle Weatherman, Ringtown. So with history, our amazing founding fathers, who we will not allow to be canceled, and the incomparable Constitution of the United States of America as our guides, let us continue today's battle, gaveling back to order this meeting of the Club for Common Sense. By the way, we're reminding you that after that brief news adjournment, we will, with our deep and unalterable commitment to common sense, provide a sanctuary of sanity to all of you who hearken here. By the way, yesterday, the April 19th, we lost Levon Helm, who performs and wrote that great song, because I don't know if he agreed or disagreed with me politically, but he knew, even though the battle was over, and I referenced the 24 election, the war goes on. Our battle against radical Islam and the communist Chinese, it goes on, believe me. So, author Jeff Weiss, he's come up with a great book called Fighting Back. It's the story of how American pilot Stan Andrews returned from combat in World War II, only to leave a life in Los Angeles to volunteer in the burgeoning state of Israel. His efforts shaped the Israeli Air Force into one of the most elite in the world, which we are seeing in real time today. And here he is, author Jeff Weiss. Jeff, welcome to the Bob Cordaro Show. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for the copy of the book. It is great. It really is. And you tell this story about Stan Andrews, but tell it for the audience.
So basically, Stan was born in New York, went off to war in World War II, was a bomber pilot in the Pacific, flew B-25s. He was a brilliant artist, brilliant writer, actually finished college at 19 before he went off to war, came back, was doing a master's on the GI Bill.
Wow.
And then in 1948 saw that Israel was poised to be declared as a state. It was clear to all who were watching that there would be an immediate invasion by all of the surrounding Arab countries. And he knew that there was a real risk that the new country would be wiped off the map. And so he decided to go and do his part to try to allow the state to be created.
Was he Jewish, Stan Andrews?
He was, but he was very assimilated. He changed his last name. It had been Annexstein. He changed it to Andrews. Mm-hmm. But he basically felt like it was a momentous time in history that the Jews were poised to reclaim their independence. And on the other hand, there was a real risk of a second Holocaust 3 years after the end of World War II. And so he decided that he needed to be part of this history that was unfolding.
So as the state of Israel was established, they're surrounded more or less by Arab countries, but certainly Arab tribes who were not too happy about the Jews returning to their homeland. And war was in the offing almost immediately. They had very limited access to sophisticated equipment of any kind.
That's correct. The British had been ruling there for over 25 years. The Jews had not been allowed to create the instruments of a modern army, a navy, an armored corps, and certainly not an air force with fighter aircraft. So the state was declared on May 14, 1948, and the war began that very night. And so while the war was unfolding, Israel needed to bring in weapons and needed to bring in trained pilots like Stan, who could immediately go into battle without needing months, if not a year or more of training.
With whatever they could get their hands on, equipment-wise, and as far as aircraft went in particular.
Correct. And those first fighter aircraft, which didn't arrive until 2 weeks after the war started, were actually German Messerschmitts that had been assembled in what was then Czechoslovakia after the end of World War II. The Germans had dispersed their manufacturing facilities to try to protect them from Allied air attacks. And so this one had survived the war, and the Czechs essentially inherited it and sold some of those planes to the Israelis.
It reads like a novel. It truly does. Tell us how the story unfolds, Jeff Weiss.
Well, thank you so much. Basically, I track Stan's his early life, his time in World War II, which was quite fascinating. He was with a really interesting squadron. They basically practiced these or performed these low altitude attacks, strafing attacks on Japanese shipping, and really had an incredible impact on the course of the Pacific War. And then he goes to Israel and joins the very first fighter squadron, the only one for the duration of the war, and was one of the first fighter pilots. And actually, among other things, put his talents as an artist to use and designed the logo for that squadron, which Israel uses to this day. It can, I'm assuming, be seen in the skies over Iran these days.
Yeah, I would guess so. Jeff Weiss is our guest. He's an Israeli, talking about Stan Andrews and his book about him called Fighting Back. Stan Andrews is a World War II fighter pilot for the United States who went on to train and deliver and help the beginning of the Israeli Air Force, which is one of the best in the world. As you look at it, Jeff Weiss, now, and as the author of Fighting Back, you've got to be extremely proud, and what a timely book this is about Israel's Air Force, which is doing extraordinary things versus Iran and Hezbollah.
It's remarkable. I mean, for someone like me who has spent a lot of time studying the early days of the Air Force, it's extraordinary on the one hand how far it has come. It is so accomplished and so effective, and in partnership with the U.S., really unstoppable. But also to see how the seeds of that future success were really planted during the War of Independence, bringing in terrific pilots like Stan, really a focus on flying excellence, a goal throughout the war to constantly improve the quality of the planes that Israel was putting into combat. And I think that also has been a hallmark, and really to become proficient at dogfighting. The Air Force of that war recorded 36 kills in air-to-air combat without losing a single plane.
Wow.
So I think a lot of those seeds were actually sown way back then, 78 years ago.
Jeff Weiss, author of Fighting Back, a story of Stan Andrews, who helped shape the Israeli Air Force, which we see so effective today. Obviously, that you've got to have a sense of history as an Israeli, but does the military, particularly the Air Force, do they revere Stan Andrews? Do they know the history of their amazing past?
You know, it's a really great question. And honestly, I think they do. I believe they do. And in particular, his squadron, the 101 Squadron, which still exists. And its nickname is the First Squadron. So it does have, I think, a special place in the heart of the Air Force as being the original one. And I think the members of it really, they love it. They love its history. And they love the logo that Stan created. And it's remarkable that they've kept it all these years.
It's amazing stuff. What brought you to this subject, Jeff Weiss, to write Fighting Back, focusing on Stan Andrews?
I wrote a prior book called I Am My Brother's Keeper about the 1,000 or so Americans and Canadians who went over and fought in the War of Independence, and really found those stories quite fascinating. But in the course of that research, came across Stan and really was captivated by him, by just the promise that still lay ahead for him in his life, and just, you know, the sacrifice that he made in going over there, the impact that he had, and decided to do a book just on him. But in the end, it took me about 15 or more years to kind of track down all the elements of his story. But it was a journey worth taking.
What do you see today in the Israeli military that was born during the War for Independence?
The Air Force was the elite back then, and in many ways it is still the elite here. There was a saying that the second commander, I think the third commander of the Air Force, Azer Weissman, came up with way back when, the best for the Air Force. And in many ways, I think that's still how folks here look at it. I think that is the highest aspiration for a young Israeli, both men and women, enlisting for their mandatory military service is to become a pilot. So I think that still very much is the case as it was back then, because the Air Force is the great equalizer for Israel, given its tiny landmass, its tiny population. It's a way that it can hold its own in a very dangerous neighborhood.
Quite amazing. The book is Fighting Back. The author is Jeff Weiss, and the subject is Stan Andrews, an American World War II combat veteran who volunteered and helped train and bring the Israeli Air Force to become one of the most elite in the world, and they are proving it every day now. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the Bob Cordaro Show. We appreciate it, and we may have to follow up with you, so please keep in touch, because this is as relevant today as it was back in 1948. It's amazing.
Thanks so much. It's been a real privilege.
All right. Jeff Weiss, author of Fighting Back, the story of the founding of the Israeli Air Force. We'll take a break. We'll be back. It's the Bob Cordaro Show. This date, 1985, Murph tells us USA for Africa had the #1 UK, US, and adult charts hit with We Are the World. And, of course, before that, man, it still shakes you to your core. This date in 1999, the Columbine High School massacre taking place in Colorado. 2 students shooting and killing 12 classmates, 1 teacher, and then took their own lives. I mean, a tragedy on so many levels. And I got to, when you look at school security and you know that it has been resisted by the left. Why? I don't get it. But aside from that political aspect of it, just the thought of that happening, and it could happen anywhere. It's just devastating to even think about. My gosh. Oh, it's all remarkable. Biden banner disgrace. Stolen valor, day 126. Please contact anyone you know or the website or the Facebook page of the Green Ridge Neighborhood Association, which has disgracefully placed a banner, a hometown hero banner, made and designed as veterans tributes to Joe Biden, who actively dodged service. They won't take it down, and that paintball-stained disgrace continues. Day 126, Biden banner disgrace, stolen valor, and we say, take it down. Our Veterans Tribute this hour, as with every hour. This date, as with every day. Brought to you by our man, John Basiliga. Basiliga Hospitality Group. Serenity Care. But today, Mondays, we salute his first company and his biggest company, Eastern Roofing Systems, the premier and one of the largest roofing companies in the eastern United States, headquartered in Jessup. They'll take all that expertise, all that buying power, and give it to you here in Northeast Pennsylvania for your home, small building, or major project. Eastern Roofing Systems. John Jack Southerton. We lost him March 28th this year. He was 89. He was from Honesdale. John shared a loving marriage of nearly 68 years with his wife, Joyce. They would have celebrated their 68th wedding anniversary April 12th. Born in Honesdale back in 1936. He went to Honesdale Catholic School before proudly serving his country in the United States Marine Corps. Jack Southerton was deeply involved in his community throughout his life. Member of the Elks, Fraternal Order of Eagles, Honesdale Golf Club, the Bucks Cove Rod and Gun Club. He coached youth athletics like the Biddy basketball for 20 years. Played a key role in organizing and coaching girls Missy basketball. He also managed the Honesdale Eagles Teener League baseball. In addition to his beloved wife, John is survived by his 4 children. Proud grandfather to 8 grandchildren, 17 great-grandchildren, 2 great-great-grandchildren, and other family members. He experienced tragedy. He was preceded in death by his infant son, Joseph Jerome Southerton. An amazing legacy. Jack Southerton of Honesdale. Our great veteran this hour brought to you by John Basiliga and Basiliga's great Eastern Roofing Systems. AccuWeather forecast brought to you by our friends at Montage Mountain Resort, who mean, well, they mean weather. And they're swinging into spring as it gets a little nicer, even though we don't feel it today. A rain or snow shower early this morning, otherwise chilly. Periods of clouds and sunshine, high of 48. Tonight, clear and cold down to 26. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, 56, low of 41. Wednesday, morning shower in the area. Otherwise, clouds giving way to some sun, 63 degrees. It'll drop down to 43 on Wednesday. Thursday, partly sunny and beautiful, 72, low 46. Friday, times of clouds and sun, high 71, low 45. And that is your weather forecast, brought to you by our friends at Montage Mountain Resort, who tell you that it's 40 degrees at Montage Mountain as I speak, even though it feels a little bit colder. We had to wait for that baritone, didn't we? Murph tells us this date, 1968, Sly and the Family Stone moved from number 14 to number 8 with their hit, Dance to the Music. Quickly, I don't want to skip it. Mother Teresa, St. Teresa for April 20th. Poverty doesn't only consist of being hungry for bread, but rather it is a tremendous hunger for human dignity. We need to love and to be somebody for somebody else. This is where we make our mistake and shove people aside. Not only have we denied the poor a piece of bread, but by thinking that they have no worth and leaving them abandoned in the streets, we have denied them the human dignity that is rightfully theirs as children of God. And nowhere could that abject poverty be experienced and dealt with as St. Teresa did in Calcutta. Quite amazing. You cannot find poverty in the United States at the level she addressed and dealt with. Hey, let's go to Jack from Nanaco. Jack, how are you?
Hey, all right, Rob, how are you?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I got a question here, because I believe what you're doing is great about this Green Ridge, the flags for the veterans, our great veterans. All right? Now, our ex-president, Trader Joe, with a T, Trader Joe?
Yeah.
Well, to me, if he's a veteran, does he get veteran benefits?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
And
He's got nothing. He
play-
has no experience except dodging service.
Exactly.
None.
I used to play soldier as a kid. Do I get veteran benefits? The same qualifications as Trader Joe? You know what I mean?
And by the way, they now know, it could have been put up by mistake, not knowing that the hometown hero banners were for veterans. But then they knew it was a mistake, and they've still kept it up there. Now it's pink paintball stains and beyond a disgrace, and it's still standing.
But it's an improvement if it's like that. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I agree there.
I get, it's like what's happening. I see common sense doesn't exist anymore. If you're on the left, you might as well just go to Cuba. Get out of this country. We don't need you here.
I'm not understanding where they're coming from and why they want to destroy the country with this. And by the way, this is a symptom of trying to destroy the country. We play those clips. Somebody said, "Oh, I'm sick of the Biden dopey stuff. I can't take it anymore." Well, whatever side of the aisle you were on, sir or ma'am, I just tell you, this is who this clown was that they're honoring. And if you want to honor him, as they did with a street and an expressway in Scranton, which is an embarrassment, Paige Cognetti and Boy King Billy Gahan. If you want to honor him with something other than a hometown hero banner, feel free. But this is wrong, and we'll tell them that every day.
Well, don't they have the junkyard at Dunmore?
Yes, they do.
Well, there you go. Perfect on it.
You are right. It's sad. It's sad stuff, Jack. And this is what the leftist and the dummycrats will not relent. They will not relent in honoring an absolute fool and embarrassment.
Well, stop building them up so much.
I know. Jack, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Stay well.
All right, my friend. Yeah, it's sad. It is sad and it's disgraceful. And they should be ashamed of themselves. And by the way, if you get a chance, you go on their Facebook page and let them know your thoughts. Be civil, obviously. You could be firm, but civil. Go to their website, the Green Ridge Neighborhood Association, and tell them what your thoughts are. It's a disgrace, and they should be ashamed. But apparently they're not. We'll take this break. We'll be back. It's the Bob Cordaro Show. Creedence Clearwater Revival. Murph says this date, 1970, they released their hit Up Around the Bend. I found this on Instagram. David J. Harris, who I follow on Instagram. So Elizabeth Warren, this is the one who played fake Indian for her entire career to her great benefit. She was asked about Molly Tibbetts being murdered by an illegal immigrant. Now, this is her reply. It's her actual reply. She says, I know this is hard for her family, but they have to remember that we need to focus on real problems, like illegal immigrants not being able to see their kids. David says, let that sink in. You see how sick these scumbags are? You see how, absolutely insane without perspective they are? It's insane. Absolutely crazy. Dismissing the murder of a young American when the illegals made the choice to separate themselves from their family. Somebody else says, isn't it embarrassing enough that we have roads named after Biden? Yeah, it is. It's a disgrace. Hey, let's go to Donald from Pittston. Donald, we got a couple of minutes. Fire away.
Oh, my God. You got to listen to this, please. That's why I call you. I try to limit to one a week. 7 senators, including John Fetterman, was on Fox News. I'm not making this up. 40 Democrats said no to the Iron Dome. AOC came to him, to Fetterman. He said right on the air, we got to even the score. You got to get rid of this Iron Dome so the bombs aren't being accepted. He said, they'll die. We got to even the score, she said. That's how sick these people are.
Wow.
The 7 squad members, he said, took over my party. He said, I'll be the last one standing for Israel. And even Bill Myers said, since when the Democrats are for the Pope and the Catholic Church, when they represent pro-abortion, pro-transgender, anti-Israel, and anti-family values. Now they're for the Pope. Give me a break, Bill Myers said. Now they're for the Pope and the Catholic Church because he's feuding with Trump. These people are crazy. Fetterman said it. A United States Senator, John Fetterman, said,
oh, and they hate him. And they hate him for telling the truth.
But why? You can't do that. He said millions of people died. Why would you want to get rid of the Iron Dome? Only 7 senators voted for the Iron Dome, and 40 not. They said we got to even the score. The terrorists have to bomb them. He said we'll lose millions of lives. I'm not making it up. It's on Fox News, the whole interview. You're right. These people are crazy.
Yeah.
We got to do something.
Trump said at the State of the Union,
the whole party? I don't know.
Trump said at the State of the Union right to their faces, which is why they despise him with a hatred that's beyond comprehension. But
members, though, squad members, why are you listening to these people? They're crazy. Look at the map on Election Day. It's all red. That's why. Oh my God! Don't fall for that stuff. They're cutting stuff. They send them flyers out all over DuPont for Bresnahan and stuff, and pitched it all over the weekend.
Well, our mayor, the mayor of Scranton's a liar. That's what she does is lie.
Everybody's talking about these flyers. Why don't you address that? That this is all scam to get a good guy out of Congress that's going to stop this insanity. Thanks for taking my call, Bob.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate it. No, it's crazy. John Fetterman's the only one making any sense on the national level for the Democrat Party. Paige Cognetti just had this Mark Kelly in, who's a real complete ass, literally telling our warriors to disobey their orders. That's what he's telling them. This is the sick brain she brings in to promote her candidacy. Shows you where she's at. Picardo's tells me it's 11:50. Murph tells us this date, 1974. Steely Dan released their hit Ricky Don't Lose That Number. And 2010 this date. An explosion on the Deepwater Horizon oil platform, leased by BP, kills 11 workers, causing a blowout that begins spewing an estimated 200 million gallons of crude into the Gulf of Mexico. By the way, fully recovered relatively shortly after that. That's an amazing story. It'll never be told because it doesn't fit the narrative of the left. The well would finally be capped nearly 3 months later. Deepwater Horizon, this date, 2010. And by the way, we're going to finish now, and here you hear it in the background. Elton John, Roger Daltrey, David Bowie, Robert Plant, Axl Rose, and Slash of Guns N' Roses, Mick Ronson, and many others performed at Wembley Stadium, London, for a tribute to the late Freddie Mercury of Queen and for AIDS awareness. A concert for life. David Bowie and reunited with guitarist Mick Ronson from Ziggy Stardust era, and they performed Heroes. That's our closing song today, brought to you by our man Murph. Bugzar texts in. He says, I love the collage of Biden's blunders and mumblings. The only one missing is his famous stop when addressing the Russians. What a pathetic fool. Somebody else, please stop the Biden dopey stuff. I can't take it anymore. I can't either. But I also can't abide those fools at the Green Ridge Neighborhood Association keeping the Biden banner up wrongfully and foolishly and embarrassingly. Somebody says, Bob, why do you lie all the time? Kelly said, don't obey illegal orders. Check out his second statement, not his first. He's a jackass. By the way, it's what these Democrats do. They get elected. In Kelly's case, he gets reelected pretending he's normal, and then he goes lunatic, sicko left. And that's who's supporting Paige Cognetti. It tells you all you need to know. By the way, also sharing campaign imagery and management with Mamdani. Please let that sink in. Taking maximum contributions from the Soros family. That's Paige Cognetti. Lunatic and incompetent. Chuck from Cardinal says, Bob, I just put my yard sign for Rob Bresnahan for Congress. 1 month until the May primary. Vote Rob for Congress. It's a smart thing. We got to save the country from these fools. Got to save the country. I had it and I've lost it, I think. I had, again, David J. Harris, who I love, put something out on the Pope. I lost it. Where the Pope says there's no praying for by war fighters. Christ won't listen. And then Harris quotes Psalms where they're praying to God and being supported in the Bible. I'm telling you, the guy's off. He's driven by an agenda beyond religion. Disgusting. Well, a great Monday to be with you guys. We'll be with you all week, I pray and hope. We want to thank Roach Supply, the premier bath and kitchen supplier in Northeast Pennsylvania, celebrating 75 years in business. Bath and kitchen. That's where to go. You check them out at Roche, R-O-C-H-E, RoachSupply.com. 75 years in business because they're that good. And thanks to Tina Morocco, Global Sales Advisor at Premier Sotheby's International, Naples, Florida. Look her up under Sotheby's International in Naples or Tina Morocco, MURACCO.com. She'll show you how truly affordable and varied everything in Florida is. Real estate in Florida is. She is your trusted guide for real estate for the state of Florida, specializing in Southwest Florida. The best. My Picardo Jeweler Watch says it's 12 and change, which means we got to make our move. Sue Henry show next. Rob O'Donnell show after that. Guys, have a great afternoon. But for now, we've got to gavel to a close this meeting of the Club for Common Sense, known as the Bob Cordaro Show. Have a great afternoon.